2, 1. We're live. Who knew?
This is 2OF Entertainment.
Hey, look at us. Here, let's do this. Let's scare everybody. There we go. So,
I got a little glow on me a little bit today.
but you look good. You look very heavenly with your glow.
It's not
I
green.
can put it that way.
Not
There
an
you go. Well, it's
alien.
not a green glow. So I guess the aliens don't love you anymore. So there you go.
Well, yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's a good week this week. Busy, and busy. Like it's lots going on.
That's
And
very good.
yourself, everything good?
Everything is good. We, as you know, this is our, as David likes to call it, our Hollywood whatever day today is, the day that we get to do the Scotch and Cigar Show. So I'm coming off the Scotch and Cigar Show and to do this show. So it's always a good day. We have
no
Scotch
smoking show. This is a no smoking show. So.
This is a no smoking or drinking show. So, well, off air, we're going to be like going nuts. So, but it's very good. But I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to spend a few minutes with our guest because there was a confusion on the time, and she's charming. And she has an accent. I think she's from Brooklyn. But she has a wonderful accent. And so we were talking about art and things. So I'm looking forward to this interview. And she does a bird's nest, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes, we're talking with Marney-Rose. So it's going to be really, I guess, I'm going to be learning a lot today too. So Marney-Rose Edge is going to talk to us about her a nesting series that she's working on. Actually, she's worked on. Quite different than some of the other things that we've shown over the past year and a half.
Right.
So let's bring her in. I think we'll just leave it as simple as that. We'll just get right into the conversation. I think
there you go. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
Wow, she can hear us. And you're going to love her Brooklyn accent, everybody. I'm just telling you in advance. So there you go. Well, you guys can talk about that. I'm gonna leave because me going ooh and ah for an hour, it's not that exciting. You guys will get into all the technical stuff. I will see you at the end. Enjoy your interview. Have a wonderful. We'll see you a little bit. Cheers.
Very much, Stephen.
Yeah. Well, good seeing you again. We had our little test run and make sure everything works okay. We got everything settled down. I guess the word is.
Yep.
So, yeah. Well, I've seen your work for many years, and part of this latest thing, I mean, I don't know how old this series is that you worked on, but it's working on something different. You paint florals and other things, and this is a series that kind of tweaked me a little bit, and a nesting series. I guess it's kind of a monochromatic, I guess, type of work, so you're not using a full palette, but we'll talk a little bit about it. Then we'll tease people with some images here, and we'll just can you tell us a little bit about this journey that you're on? The journey before you get to where we're doing the nesting, and we'll talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so I've been a full-time artist for 14 years. I got laid off from my regular job and decided to do art full-time. And I have painted a lot of things. I started off with florals because I'm a gardener. I absolutely love gardening, and we bought a house at the same time that I started painting in 2003. And the garden was pretty spare when we moved into the house, and it's now a jungle, back and front, and we put a pond in with some fish as well, which caused interest with herons and raccoons and all the wildlife in the neighborhood. So doing florals in watercolor for a good 10 years before changing over to a different medium. So I moved into acrylics and also oils. And then I was painting nests from around 2014 when I moved into the studio building that I'm in now. So it was really about becoming an empty nester, and I started those nests in acrylics.
Right.
And they ended up with a lot of stories on family. My brother-in-law just was still living at home at the age of 40, and so it was like they kept coming back. They got their suspenders caught in the branches and kept returning to home. So
we'll get into those details a little bit when we start putting some images up. But a lot of, so are you trained? Are you a trained artist from?
No, self-taught.
Excellent. So did mom and dad paint, anybody like that? Or?
My mum painted a little bit. My dad was a photographer.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really.
That's where you get the eye from. You know, you get.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I think it's important. You know, design is as important to anything. You can paint well, but if your design is bad, it just, there's something's not clicking. Right? So it's really nice to have that included in your portfolio a little bit, is to understand how you can use those things. So do you use reference material a little bit, or do you reference it on?
I do take photographs a lot. So I started off with the camera being my sketchbook. I really, was embarrassed about that for a long time before I got over the fact that it's perfectly fine.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to get Stephen to start our first image, and then we at least there's your studio, so we can, we can continue talking. Sorry for the interruption.
Oh, not a problem. So, so taking photographs, I always have a camera with me, whether it's a phone or my SLR. So there's always something to capture, and I was fascinated by the light and florals, the light in florals, perfect vehicle. So, and then when it came to the nests, I had a little fake one from Garden Works that I started off with. It had 3 little eggs in it, and then moved into, people started gifting me nests. So I have a collection of about 9 of them in the studio now that I use as a leaping off point. And then it's all about reacting to the marks or the medium and with the charcoal.
Yeah. So this is charcoal based to start with, is like a drawing, and do you work on a prepared panel or a surface? Is that what you work on?
These are all on panel. I started with Yupo, and I started at the end of 2021 with this series, and decided, I woke up one morning thinking, I can do them in charcoal. So off I went to the studio and tried it out, and it was really, the surface of Yupo was very smooth.
Yeah.
So it was a great vehicle, but I had issues with mounting it once I went bigger with them, and they lifted. So
framing is a big issue in presentation. On works. Yeah. And I know a lot of artists use Yupo, and it's very conducive to movement and color and kind of freedom. It's that slick surface on it. But
so then I worked on creating gessoed panels for it to get the same kind of surface,
right,
and found it worked. So went from there.
Yeah. No, I had a friend that he'd do a gesso, but then he also had a mix. He'd make a marble dust in with it. And then really fine, multiple layers, and really fine sanded. And then he'd work with his charcoal and his pencils on it, and you got beautiful blacks. Just unbelievable, ultra smooth surface. It's a nice substrate for that.
Wonderful for creating marks on. So
and I love the freedom of this first one. There's this looseness of smatter, and there's the nest. You can feel the birds kind of fluttering around it a little bit. But so are most of your nests kind of urban bird nests, I guess I'll call it?
I've the largest one I did was an eagle's nest.
Oh, really?
And somebody's just given me permission to use their photograph for another. So, and that was a 5 foot by 4 foot panel that, They're mostly, I started off with robin's nests because that's what I had, and then I've got juncos and pictures of a tui's nest. So I would, oh, and I have a Stella J nest in the studio as well, which is quite big.
Yeah.
So it just varies from, but mostly urban birds around the recognizable crows as well.
So can you really recognize not only by size, but the architecture that's gone into these nests,
Yeah.
the uniqueness of that bird building the nest, or birds actually probably both building them at the same time?
Yeah, yeah. And also I found a crow's nest that had used strapping from pallets
Oh, really?
and plastic bags stuffed into it and all sorts of things. And it was just draping down from a tree close to the studio.
Yeah.
The gardeners cleared it out, and luckily I got photos of it and was able to create a 5-foot by 40-inch panel of that for my current show coming up.
So that's so funny because they're using our urban garbage to
Yes.
create their home and nesting with. It's just,
Yeah.
it's almost reversed. We used to use, lumber and timber and things to build our homes with, and now these things are
Yeah.
flipped around the other way. So it's that would be very interesting to see is how those bags. It's sort of like bag blown up against a frost fence. You
Yeah.
get a feeling like that, but it said now you have that bag worked into an actual living structure.
Yeah,
Right?
and the amount of strapping from pallets that was in this was all woven in and hanging down and creating quite the camouflage as well.
In on the prairies, a lot of the say the wildlife that do get hit by vehicles in the ditch, and I go back and forth between cities here, and I'll look at a certain one, and it doesn't take long for it to fall to disseminate the animals, and
Yeah,
the birds take the tufts of hair from the deer, and they use that for their nests. So there is not much left by the time the coyote gets there, and the raven, the crow, and then the little birds take that hair for their nests and nesting, and everything's reused in a sense. So
yes.
are you kind of into the environment a little bit and making
Uh,
statements a little bit?
Definitely. Well, not making statements so much, but
Hmm.
really into nature. So no, I haven't got on to. I do as
But
much as I
there is
inspire.
storylines. There are storylines that you already mentioned about your brother-in-law,
Yeah,
and the relationship of the analogous thing of the nest and that person, right? So
yeah. And even, I had, and this, the nest had been, it needed to fall apart before, thinking our son was not going to leave until the house fell down, basically.
no, do you find that when you paint in a series, it strengthens as you go? So you keep
Oh,
finding pieces of the puzzle that build the story?
yes.
And you find that sometimes the initial one might be the catalyst to the other ones that come from it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the story continues to build in layers, one on top of the other. Uh,
Yes. So
but
the more I work in bodies of work or series of work, that they evolve and they get stronger.
they do. And I think I kind of encourage people to, if an artist wants to try doing a series of something that sounds maybe boring, but really, if you're about painting and you're absorbed in painting, you found a subject you really like. This, I can see you really like doing these, just the textures and the
Yeah.
lines, and you're actually weaving and building the nest like that bird was building it.
Yes.
I'm trying to understand that level of. It's complicated. The architecture? I mean, that thing has to be sturdy and support a family, right?
Exactly. They're so fragile and yet so strong to
Right.
support the most delicate of eggs and
Yeah.
their young once they're cracked open. But it blows my mind how birds can do this with just beak and a feet. And and I've watched one, push the moss into the sides of it.
Yeah.
So they're and birds appear within the mark making. They just sometimes, bugs and birds just happen out of it that I can emphasize or just let the viewer discover them for themselves.
Yeah, I love that where you can say, "Oh, there's a bird there. Maybe there's maybe a bird there," and they
Yeah.
are kind of like that when they're near their nests because they kind of camouflaged a little
Yes.
bit,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's hard to see them. So it's really nice that they can go in and out of the plane like that you're working on. So they're not a dominant thing where the
Right.
nest is dominant, but they're supportive of what it is. So it's a living nest. This one for sure because it's got two eggs in it.
Yeah,
Uh,
and it even
also-
looks like a little egg outside of the nest that I only just noticed
yeah.
now.
Well, what is the importance to like titling? Like, is that
Oh,
dangerous? Is that dangerous, or does it help? Does it help the viewer, or does it actually just help you?
it
Is that
does. Titles are very, very important. It
yeah?
really helps make a connection. It helps the viewer. Sometimes, the viewer will see the painting and connect to it before they read the title, and then the title may make them chuckle or have a little epiphany and think, yeah, that it's more of an emotional connection.
Right. Well,
So,
a lot of your works, they feel very they're romantic, I guess I'll
yeah,
call it. They're very romanticized, and
yeah,
I feel they're very much 17th century feeling of, or even 18th century. There's that feeling of a little old world, but maybe it's because this one here has got little touches of ochre in it. There's that almost that
yeah,
duotone look to it, right? So
yes.
what size is this one about?
That is 12 by 12 inches.
Yeah, nice little square panel. Yeah,
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
So did you have a show of these works?
I do. Coming up in Seashelt, June 22nd is the opening, and it's on till August 18th.
There you go.
And there are 20 pieces that I'm taking up. And I've probably I've created 50 to 60 pieces in the last 2 years with them, and they still fascinate me every time I pull away.
How was the response with the public? How did they
It's
respond?
it's been really good right from the get-go. It's been people gravitate to nests. I don't know if they reminds them of home or family or what, that there's probably a nostalgia with it as well as nature.
Right.
There's just, well, this one should be Fragile Beauty, but a little bit of a spelling mistake.
I was wondering because that was off of the
Yeah,
the
probably mine.
JPEG, and I went, Fraggy. Okay, that's what she wants to call it. Okay. Anyway, we got to have a whoops somewhere, but that's
Yeah,
still pretty cool though.
it
It's like
is.
Fraggy Rock, right? Fraggle Rock. It's a little bit
So,
funny.
and probably one of the best titles I had was for a 48 by 36, and it was called "The Kids Have Gone, Let's Get Naked," and it sold immediately, and
Yeah,
it to an older gentleman who had started a new relationship.
there you go. Well, the images are, if they were on somebody's wall, they're unique. They're not a
Yeah,
beautiful landscape. They're not a, pristine lake and beautiful trees and a pathway that a lot of people want to have those things to take them away from their daily life a little bit in a remembrance of a
yeah,
space that they really want to be in again on a regular basis. I'm assuming that with some works are people who paint realistic paintings, for instance.
yes,
Um, this one is kind of a touchstone for people that have had a walk in the woods and have had a nest in their yard
yeah,
and they stayed away from it and let the birds have their family, and then they move on, right? So they let them do those things. They
yes,
feel, I guess I've had it. We had a young couple of sparrows have a nest in one of our little birdhouses this spring. And my wife says, "Don't go near the garden. Just leave them alone." Okay, I'll leave them alone.
Yeah. Well, you're very lucky to have it, to actually find a nest too.
Yeah. Well, they're actually a little birdhouse that we had built. They nested in that. We've had robins nest before right up against the wall and behind a tree and strange places in hiding. But again, they don't last forever. But when you get one of these pieces, it kind of brings that special moment that you had a connection with
Yeah.
wildlife of some kind. And it's nice you look up and there it is.
Yeah.
It's a
That
yeah.
it is very different from a lot of other art, and having that special connection to it, and also with it being monochromatic as well.
Yeah.
Just
I mean, yeah.
more.
With people in their homes, it, like you said, monochromatic. It's not a dominant piece that would say disturb something else that they were doing in their home. I mean, if it's 12 by 12, it's not meant to be a dominant piece.
No.
But in a gallery situation, you're going to see a number of these side by side. So they're going to be a whole different feeling when you look at it in a commercial way, in presentation.
Yes.
For, I guess, for sale initially, not
Yeah.
for just. I mean, this would make a really great supportive installation show. Say you actually built your own nest out of twigs and branches, whatever. I'm just saying, and then these are supported by visual images that were in the same space.
Yeah.
It's just another way of conveying the message to people. It'd be a lovely thing for kids to learn how to make a nest. There's all those little learning things
Yeah.
that would be just love. And you're a teacher as well, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So is you teaching mostly like watercolors and
watercolor and cold wax and oils.
okay.
A little bit of acrylics or oils if depending on the subject. So
Yeah.
I've taught clouds with both, and I'll be doing abstracted landscapes and still life in cold wax and oil.
So is that for adults or children?
Adults. I do the senior group.
Senior group. Well, hey, that's where the experience is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So this one is a horizontal, like really,
Yeah.
really, really horizontal compared to. I think I love that white space around it. It gives it a nice, looser feeling. It's not so heavy.
No, and that's what I've discovered is the negative space is actually more important than anything else. And it's I just bought a book on intuitive composition by Albert Handel, and he talks about the empty negative space, and these are intuitively painted, so there's no planning ahead of time of where the composition starts. So
Okay.
it really becomes exactly about the negative space when I'm creating them.
Yeah. I think a lot of times when you know the shape of the nest, but I think when you start choosing a horizontal landscape or a square or vertical, you got to fit it in there somehow
Yeah.
and your design definitely shows up that it's designed well. It's not I just love the strokes go in and out of the nest. So there's a strength there, but I think you need a starting point, and then the other one's just kind of those nice light grays. They just support the
Yeah.
structure. So you do a lot of scratching in and removal and then layering. How does that work?
It's mostly putting the charcoal down and then removing it and moving it around. And some I have used sticks to do. Some you can see on the little fluff piece on the right hand side of the nest that
Yeah.
was actually worked in with a stick as well.
Okay. So not everything's with a brush.
No,
It's
not with a brush. It's with a squeegee, and I will emphasize the depth of the nest for another layer if I need to. But usually they get done within 2 layers most.
yeah. What do you do to seal the layers?
I use a spray varnish to start with, and then I'll brush varnish afterwards to seal
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the only way with charcoal. You got to seal it up a little bit, then you got to move
Yeah.
in layers. And so is there any other pigment other than like charcoal in this series?
So where you see the yellow, that was an acrylic gold that I was using
Okay. Yeah.
underneath, but pretty much these are all, there's one image I think where I've got some acrylic inks used as
I think
well.
it's coming up. Yeah. We've got
Yeah.
some with a bit more color in it. Yeah.
This one's 48 by 30. So you can see it's starting to get bigger.
Right. And this one really gives me a feeling of that nest that's kind of falling apart. It's hanging from something. And I
Yeah.
love the design of that in a vertical sense. And you're right, the negative space below is essential. It's essential to give you the lightness and feeling of what's happening. So we call this one Daydreamer.
Yeah. It reminded me of a dream catcher. And and there was when you see it in person, I see a face mask in it as well that I left.
Right. I start seeing eyeballs all of a sudden here now too. When you start seeing faces and things, I can almost see
right hand side,
a fox or a coyote in here as well, looking straight at me, which is really cool. I mean, when you think of it, it wasn't intended when you paint it, but some of these things just happen, and if you leave them, they're beautiful extras. It's a value-added piece when there's more than just what is depicted, and like you said, the dream catcher.
A long time and discover more and more every time you sit with it.
Yeah, that's the lovely thing about art.
Yes.
It's just I try to explain to people that it's not like watching a TV or a movie and then you never want to watch it again. This is it grows each day. The light shines on it differently in your room, and nighttime it looks a little different than daytime. So it's a visual stimulant. If it's something you really like, buy it. I mean, it's great value for your whole life, but also I think it enriches you a little bit that
very much.
You can see other things and experience other things, because this is quite a different subject matter for a lot of people to buy and to be in tune with, but yet they still are in tune with it because I think they like to be in touch with nature, but some are afraid of it, but some a little nest, something all you do is let it and sit there and watch it daily while it goes through their lives. It's kind of a connection thing.
Yeah.
And these ones here and another vertical one.
Yeah. This was 36 by 24.
Okay. Yeah. This one's Find Your Wings and Fly. So
when the bird appeared.
I can see the little guy down there on the right. Is that little one a peeper? Yeah.
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 The bird appeared and it's like, well, it's time to leave the nest.
I think a lot of us go through that, right? That's a great analogy, leaving the nest, and the ones that do come back.
Yeah.
And you try to make it just a little uncomfortable. So yes, you have to do your own laundry and and by the way, you got to pay a little rent.
Yeah, there you go.
But it's times are tough right now, so I understand it with a lot of people that are supporting family in all different ways. And I think this nesting series also shows that too. There is a natural time to leave the nest, but I think there is also a sharing and an understanding within nature that some things have to be taken care of, right?
Yes.
At certain stages. Yeah. This has that torn look a little bit. So it's like it's done its job.
Yep.
And because they I think some birds reuse nests, or they'll use another bird's nest, but really birds rebuild each year, or each one is a new nest usually.
Yes.
Even with our little birdhouse, I cleaned it out. They bring all their new sticks and and fiber in there, and I'll open it up and take a look and see what they did. But it's they like to start fresh with their own.
Yeah, they'll repair them and just, or start from scratch. And then crows tend to go back to the same nests all the
Yeah,
time, as do eagles.
right. Well, I think a lot of it with eagles would be how many, like they're quite high up in the trees, right? It's
Yeah,
quite a how many perches are available, for a good nest, right?
yeah,
And I think a lot of times they mate for life as well as their
yeah,
spaces. That's a territorial bird as well, I think. So that's their nest. They can.
yeah. They'll go back and they'll leave it for a good long time, but their babies stay with them for what, 2 years or something, 2 or 3
Okay.
years before
Yeah.
they actually are off on their own.
Yeah, I'm not much of a. I wish I was more of a bird watcher, but we have limited number of birds to watch here. But
Yeah.
um, very seasonal, a lot of them.
Yes.
And I right in the season when I'm doing other things. And they don't always just come out on Sunday, when you take your glasses and go with the group on a Sunday bird watching and bird counting. It's quite a
It's quite a
thing.
thing.
Yeah. And it's good that some of them do that because we can monitor the numbers as
Yes.
to how we are affecting them. And so back to, are you doing some kind of environmental responses of some kind? Do you have a future agenda that you might speak to some things? I mean, you're already doing that with your nesting, but
Not consciously.
that's the best way, not consciously,
Yeah.
until somebody notices it, right? And
Yeah.
then
I think
yeah,
when they get seen as a collection, it may be that there'll be more of an environmental statement amongst them.
right.
It'll
I
be
think it's yeah.
interesting this Saturday when I give an artist talk, and I'm not sure how long I get to do that for either. So, and to see what comes out of it, because they are more about the local birds. There's even a pigeon nest that I called the minimalist because they do the bare minimum to create a nest, and this one has like 3 sticks, and that's it. They'll just drop an
That's
egg.
it, honey. That's it, honey. You got 3 sticks. That's
Yep.
it. It's the house. Oh
It
my.
kind of looks like a nest, but really they'll drop eggs anywhere.
Yeah.
They're quite bizarre, and one of my students calls it the lazy buggers.
No, it's very true. Here again, you bring a little bit of that pigment in on there for a little
Yeah,
subtle coloration.
yeah.
What was the reason for that? The other ones are just pretty well charcoal. What was the introduction
So
of color?
the it was just adding a little bit of warmth. I
Mhm.
really, I did, I guess, a group of them with the gold, and I haven't done any with gold this year at all. They've just been very
Right.
black and white and much more about the negative space. So that's how they've evolved.
Right.
So having that little hint of warmth, again, just black, white, and gold or black and white, it was just adding something that we'll see what happens. And it's put down underneath randomly, and then the nest is created over it. And it's just how it pops through.
Yeah, it's just very softly, lightly dry brushed in almost. It's just kind of a soft
Yeah,
undertone, and
yeah,
it does give it a different feeling
it does.
um,
It does.
of warmth. Um, but I can see almost feathers in these ones.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, it's got a nice undercutting, back cutting. So when you remove the charcoal, you remove that with an eraser of some sort, or
It's a silicone bowl scraper.
oh, okay, yes, that would, yeah. Well, use what you can. If it's
Yeah,
a broken stick, use that, I guess. And
yeah. It's
but,
pretty much anything that will take it off and take it off cleanly. So
yeah, so that it just it's really important to get back down to that substrate that you had to give you the
yeah,
brightness back in there, right? So
yeah.
And then once you seal it, that's it. You're done.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
you've got to move on, or it's hard to get back to the whites. It's
Yeah.
sort of like doing a watercolor. You can get darker, but it's hard to get lighter. You can only retract and remove just so much in a
Exactly.
watercolor piece as well. So
Yeah.
it has some risk factor to it a little bit, which I kind of like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is, because I'm not sure what they're going to turn out like. I have to sit back and look at them and think about it, and then, go back in and remove more or add more. They
Right.
take contemplation as well.
They do, I think an artist probably has his favorite chair they sit in and they look at their work.
Yeah.
I think it's really important that you're happy with the pieces of work that you present to your public, saying
Yes.
this is the best I can do. This is where I am today,
Yeah.
and I did the best I can for today. And then we're always striving to be somewhat better or unique or a different vision
Well,
of
it's
where you're going.
growth within your own work, right? You should always
It
look at
does.
your own work as a comparison to your own work, and
Yeah.
that way you can see your own growth, which I strive for. It's like I want to keep learning and keep sharing, because I love to teach, so I love to be able to share what I learn, and so I want to keep growing, and
Yeah.
I hope the students I teach want to grow as well. So
I think they look forward to seeing what the teacher does a lot of times,
with
and it it puts pressure on you. I
it does.
found I found years ago, I taught for a little while, and I was at a plateau in my work personally, and the best way to get over the plateau of that fence is to teach.
Yes.
And as soon as you start teaching, you need to learn better. You need to
Yeah,
learn what you're teaching. Otherwise, your students are asking you some awkward questions you can't answer.
that,
And so you go back to re-educating yourself a little bit, and then you can quit teaching and then get back to doing work again. But always, think about it. The odd teaching once in a while, it's a real awakening. And
it is. It really pushes you out of your comfort zone, because you've got to be prepared for everything. And if you're not, then if you can't answer a question, I'll be honest and say I don't know.
I always said I'll tell you next week.
Yeah. Let me try that out. I'll give you the
Yeah.
conclusion.
Well, a lot of it came down to that because a lot of students come in at pretty high levels. They're not all
Yeah.
of experience. They're all at different levels and
Yeah.
understanding. And I found I learned almost as much from them
I
and what
agree.
they were doing.
You do. I love learning from my students as love them to learn from me. And I love exploring too, because there's always a fascination of, I got to try it. I got to see what will happen if I do this. This is the one that has the alcohol links on it, as well as the gold. And there's gold, gambling gold paint on this, as well as gold
Yeah.
acrylic.
Yes, this is really a rich painting. I love the umbers and I guess with that gold mixes with charcoal, it gives you that umber
That's
feeling in
right.
the bottom part. So the plane is pretty well filled up
Yes.
in the square format from all four edges, which
Yes.
gives you a whole other feeling. And that glow is lovely around the nest. It just it's very warm feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So this was an experiment.
right.
I wanted the look and feel of old photographs.
And it does. Yeah, it does very
And
much.
and so it ended up selling, but it was an experiment to see what it would be like. And so this one was done on I had a primer. So I used Zinza 123 primer, and the
Mhm.
primer was too cold. So without putting gesso on, I just used primer instead for the surface, because I was just trying out different surfaces at the time. And so the primer was too cold, so I decided to warm it up with the inks.
So have you worked with encaustic at all?
No.
Well,
No,
that's a whole other level. You might
it,
want to try a little bit of that one day. That'll get you hooked. Uh, these are beautiful pieces for encaustic work as well. And working on your existing substrate is perfect for that.
yeah.
Um, so have you worked with reticulation at all, like the breaking up of your pigment?
Uh,
So, like if you put your charcoal down, you can add, I forget what it is, you can add to that like a spray and it'll break it all up into like an old photograph.
oh, like a granulation?
Yeah, it's a granulation. I can't
Yeah.
remember what it is.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, I've used granulation medium with the different inks and stuff.
Yeah.
And I did another experimentation that was just acrylic inks with the granulation medium, and it was fascinating the texture that I got with that.
Right. Yeah. Well, initially when we started, I looked at these and I thought they're like monoprints. They're beautiful. These are the kind of things you can do in monoprinting. And I thought it was a
Yeah.
printmaking technique that you were using. And when I find out you're actually just hand drawing and painting directly on the panel. And but anyway, you know what? That's the thing. You can do a number of different things and never finish, right? You can do
Right.
encaustic and printmaking and all kinds of things in a similar
Yeah.
subject matter.
Yeah.
It can look very similar, but this one, stay with what you're doing. That's you've got this one figured out, and it still has probably lots of room to move as well, right? You're still
Yeah, I think so.
growing, developing, and yeah.
So this was a 30-inch square. And the first one, I incorporated a branch into it.
Right. I do get a real feeling this is hanging there. You're just hanging there,
Yeah.
and the white space again is really essential to the piece to give it that
Yeah.
airiness and lightness. So it's not a real heavy nest. It's just there, right?
Yeah.
And
It's
like
just
you
there.
said, the branch does justify the leaves and things on the left.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful drawing. Some of these they kind of remind me of Andrew Wyeth ish. If you've looked at the work
Oh,
of Andrew Wyeth,
yeah.
American painter, and he always loved nature, and he loved nature that was attached to like old homesteads and the
Yeah.
building structures that he worked in, and it has a romantic feeling for sure. It's very Elizabethan a little bit, It has that
Yeah.
feeling. Yeah, I feel like Sherlock Holmesy a little. Well, you always have those overgrown gardens and things
Yes.
that were in shows and movies that you kind of watch, and I think these have that. Maybe it's that overgrown garden that you have now. You're
Yeah.
incorporating the things that are part of that, but it's that I just like the wispiness of them, and yet there's a dominance. And it's really difficult dealing with, say, a dominant oval or circle
Yeah.
on your page, and that's what the center of that nest is.
Yeah.
Yet it's been somewhat, um,
Disturbed.
yeah. Well, no, it's kind of holding it together with all the
Yeah.
material around it, and it's not about the dominant whole anymore that is
No.
in the page. It's about the whole thing. So I guess there was a focus of the darker spot, but
This was a crazy one. So it was 48 by 36.
yeah, very different nest too.
Yes.
This one is very craggly,
Yes.
and it's like stay away from my nest kind of a thing. You wouldn't want to be near the raven's nest anyway, and I guess they defecate on everything. It's kind of a raven is one of my favorite birds, and I've done a lot with, well, not a lot. I've done some things with ravens and trying to understand them a little bit. And they're very, very sophisticated bird, and you would
Yeah.
expect them to have a very sophisticated nest, but it maybe it is in its own sense.
Yeah.
It has to be. They're a big bird, so they got to be structurally big.
Yes.
The nest has to be made out of bigger sticks than little tiny twigs.
Yes.
So it's gotta, yeah. So what were you thinking when you made this one more so than the other ones?
I was thinking of an eagle's nest to start with, but realized the panel was just too narrow for that. Hence why it became a raven's, and I looked at raven's nests after the fact, and I'm like, oh, there you go. That's what it is. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was, just the complexity of all the textures in there and the marks in there. It was like, yeah, I can see this is, and you're high enough up that you're not really looking into the nest, you're just seeing all
Right.
side.
Yeah, it would be hard to get high enough up. You'd have to be in a building looking down on them quite a bit.
Yeah,
We tend to like the higher locations for
yeah.
um, keep an eye out for everything. But it's did they use um, our leftover stuff to build their nests with as well?
No, this was not environmental. They just, well, I think birds everywhere, so you can get the same breed of bird, but they'll build different nests just because of their environment of what they're in. So this one was much more about the large sticks and being able to drag in as much of natural material rather than the city, because we don't get too many ravens down this far.
Yeah,
They're mostly up on the coast.
yeah, yeah. Ours as well. They're more in the north, but they do come down. There's a few that do come down in this winter.
Yeah.
They hang around. They hang around the KFC bucket.
There you go. I have to do one.
Yeah, and I was just curious as to like you always hear about ravens and they collect shiny objects and they
Yes.
have little stashes of their favorite things that they're attracted to. And I was just wondering, do they put any of those in their nests? I don't know if they do, or they just have
Well,
them in their hiding spots.
I've heard of crows picking up dog toys and putting them in a nest. So little plushies and stuff.
Okay, yeah.
So
Well, I know. Yeah, marbles are one of the other ones. I think they found marbles and shiny
Oh,
objects, that glass items
yeah.
that they can carry off. But it's very interesting for to look at this. But like I said, you're looking at a bird that's fairly sophisticated and smart. Yeah, you look at some of the little birds, and they've built some pretty sophisticated little nests
Yes.
themselves.
Yeah.
Where this one is kind of toss it together, get those kids gone, and we're out of here. You know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like a bad hair day, right?
It has a bad hair. Well, barbed wire day of some kind, but I'm
Yeah.
going, but
Yeah.
that's what the mark making is about, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a few other strokes that are on an angle and a few that that jagged look about them is a nice thing that you can create with that medium.
Yeah.
So a lot of artists understand you don't need to have every color in your palette. Just use charcoal.
No. No.
Charcoal in one color. You can create um, a lot of really great things. Here's another one. Why why scared place?
Oh, another spelling mistake. Sorry, it should be sacred.
Ah,
Sacred
I
place.
like scared place. I was looking at
Oh,
that and I'm going, yep, okay,
I
I'm
was
scared.
1 o'clock in the morning. I was rejigging all these things. So,
I didn't question on them. We didn't
oh,
go,
I am. Oh,
but
I am
it,
bad.
it
Yeah,
works. Either one works.
sacred
This
place.
one is really, I love this one because it's tied to the page and but it does have, there's definite um strength and agitation in this one. There's just
Yes,
yeah,
you can feel it falling apart.
yes.
It has
Yeah,
been done for the season, and it really is.
well worn.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of different textures in it that, so it's not just sticks or anything. So it really has that feel of disintegrating.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really difficult to, tie something to a single stroke in the bottom of the page.
Yeah,
And you've anchored it on the left as well, but um that's a real design challenge. To say, build something that I don't know if it was done intentionally to start with, but I think as you work, you figure it out.
yeah.
And
It was.
things,
Um, it may have started off, and then I decided on the bottom one to just anchor it, but not make it literal, I left some space there for the eye to fill in.
Yeah, it's very softly placed, and but it's almost crucial for this one. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of times you'll feel a lot of things that are a stick, and then there's this ball of stuff on it,
Yep.
and you know that it's done for the day, and it's fragile. But I
Yeah.
love the stroke on it. The mark making is beautiful, uh, just to give you that feeling. So do you scratch in with like the handle or different things of your brush or
No,
pencil?
it's all just removed.
Just
Sometimes
remove with a
I use a Q-tip.
hey, don't give up all your secrets. Well,
Paint with
yeah,
Q.
I know a lot of times you can buy those little burnishing sticks for charcoal and
Yeah,
different things too, but I think
there's just all sorts of, whatever is in the studio, I will try.
yeah, no. Well, there's always those things, your go-to
Yeah,
favorite things, right? And I think
yeah.
that if you know it's gonna give you the surface you want and the texture you want, you think it's
This is the 5 by 4 foot. This is the eagle's nest.
oh, nice. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and the weaving work is really different on this one
yeah,
than the other ones. Things are really tightly woven together. I mean, you got some big birds that are in this
yes,
nest.
yeah.
I think those nests have got to be 2.5 feet wide. Would they be? They're
Oh, they
2 feet?
I'm going to say they're closer to 6.
6 feet wide. Holy
Yeah,
smokes! Well, I'm looking at them from the ground. I mean,
yeah. Oh, yeah, and
it's hard to get up there.
it
Yeah,
is.
that's a big nest.
Yeah.
6 feet. Yeah.
So
Wow.
my husband shared a photo with me that had a bear, a 3-year-old bear, sitting in a nest quite comfortably for an eagle nest.
Wow.
So, and that gives you some context of how huge they are. Park rangers have sat in a nest.
Yeah. Waiting
Yeah.
waiting for them to come back. I don't think I'd want
Once they're gone, it's like, okay, it's a free season until they come back to nest again. But yeah, they're huge.
Yeah.
And the
No.
depth of them as well. And they're literally dragging tree branches.
Well, on a 6-foot one, you can see there,
Yeah,
uh, being big things, but take the great big salmon up there and have it for lunch.
exactly. And if they have 2 chicks. There was, I think somebody shared a photo of a nest that I can use, and it's an eagle's nest from up above. They're looking down into the nest, and it had 3 chicks, which is unusual.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
and their wingspans are what, 8 feet or something each.
I would
They're,
yeah, they could an adult one could be very well. They're big.
yeah.
Yeah. Are you part of, a bird society at all, or
No, I am really an amateur bird watcher. When I built the garden with my husband, we wanted birds to come, and we even have had a pileated woodpecker hanging around, and we get flickers and hummingbirds all the time, and just different varieties come in. Sometimes we something that we hadn't seen before, like a little Audubon finch that came through, and it's like, oh, we get the bird books out.
yeah, we've got a couple there too, but we yeah, might get a half a dozen different birds in our yard at any one time, but the not as varied as they are on the coast or down east.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, that has been great. I've enjoyed, and this is your studio again. It's a couple of your other taller pieces of work,
yeah.
and I think it's there.
Ah,
He is.
there's Stephen.
Hey, I'm back. I liked it, but I looked at our website, so I cheated. So I got to see everything ahead of time. So here's my question I ask everybody. So what's your artwork start at? Like, what's the low? What's the high?
Yep,
So if someone watching this wants to
yep.
buy something, how much?
So I have my smallest. I have like an introduction of 6 by 6 inches for $200.
Okay.
And, they go up to 7,000.
There you go. And that's Canadian, everybody. So remember,
Yeah.
7,000 Canadian, like maybe $40 US. So, it's just a lot to ship across the border. That's where it gets expensive.
Yep.
So there you have it. Well, that was very cool. Thank you for joining us today. That
Well,
was
thank
awesome.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very inspirational. Maybe other people can get doing their series of work as well, and we'll go
Yeah.
from there. Yeah, appreciate it, and
all
good
her
luck with your
information will
show.
be- Yep, and all your information will be below. So if you'd like to reach out, please feel free. If you can't figure out how to push the little buttons on YouTube, reach out to the show, and we will put you in touch. But all her information will be below, and we'll see everybody next Thursday. Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful day.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.